Hello and welcome to the eCom Life podcast, brought to you by 5874 Commerce. My name is Rupert Cross, I'm the Chief Digital Officer here at 5874. We're a global commerce agency headquartered in Birmingham with offices in London and Austin, Texas. Today we're going to be talking to you about customer experience, why it's important, where you can go right and where you can go wrong. With that in mind, I'm pleased to introduce our guest for this week. Stuart Pick, VP of Strategic Partnerships and Alliances from Brightpearl, a retail operations platform, and Chris Baker, Head of Design at 5874 Commerce. Gents, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come on this Friday afternoon. The idea of the podcast is we have a chat around a topic, and it feels really prevalent at the moment, which is customer experience, why it matters as we stand here today. I mean, what are we? Is it 25th of September? It's something like that today, isn't it? We've been in whatever this second lockdown is for 2 days, even though it's that partial in and out thing, and where we're going to. And I think it was actually so we were talking about just before we got on the pod that the BBC have put an article out today with the headline that reads "Shoppers are warned to buy early for Christmas or miss out," and that we can't be in that place. But anyway, we can dive into it. But I mean, I guess with that in mind, guys, why don't you introduce yourselves, Stu? Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, hi, thanks, and thanks for inviting me on. So I'm Stuart. I run partnerships at Brightpearl, tech partnerships, but also agency relationships with people like yourselves as well. For anyone who doesn't know, so Brightpearl is a retail operations platform. So it means that we deal with all of the complexity that happens behind the scenes in the back office once an order is placed. And most importantly, we automate as many of those processes as we can so that merchants can focus on the things that are really important.
Cool, excellent. Thanks, Stu. And Chris, why didn't you introduce yourself and kind of the role you do at 5874? There's a few arms to that, isn't there?
Sure. Yes. I'm the head of design at 58, and working with the design team and the wider team, get involved through various stages of the project, from discovery, where we look at user experience and how we can support the business needs and meet the users' needs, and then through to delivery, where we develop the visuals and the various design assets of the websites. And we also get involved in a lot of brand building and that sort of thing. Some exciting clients and some interesting projects.
Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, guys, it feels like, I mean, deliberately so. We kind of picked both of you to come onto the pod for this reason, but we've got everything from the nose to the tail of the customer experience there. So, I mean, I guess so starting with the front end of a website, Chris. I mean, what does customer experience mean to you? Where does it start? Where does it stop? I guess there's probably a bit of brand involved in that, and no doubt it's not just the website. What does that mean to you guys?
Yeah, so we look at a lot of projects from a user experience point of view, and I think that user experience starts before the customer even hits the website. So it's about what they're bringing to the product or service that you're offering. So what's the need? How have they become aware of you? All that kind of story that happens before they even hit the website. And then obviously we look at supporting the user's journey through the site. So product discovery, search, and browsing and that sort of thing, and making it as usable and easy as possible for them to get that item into the basket and pay for it. And then it's the journey following that where you're serving confirmation emails and they've received the product, and maybe there's some questions that they have around their order and they need to communicate with the customer service team. So it's at every point along the journey how you're making that journey as easy for the customer as possible.
Yeah, interesting. So, Stu, I mean, I guess that's the kind of top level. That's if we're talking about that seagull that sat quietly on the waves, and it looks as though it's calm as hell. What you guys are dealing with the other stuff, aren't you? Where do you guys fit in?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo what Chris said. So for me, the experience is kind of before, during, and after. I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely had good experiences and some pretty bad experiences before, during, and after. I also think that it's quite subjective, like what will put people off as consumers, and it can often be the really small things, the detail that I think can affect people. I think where we come at this from is that, and I always quote this research that we did with Trustpilot last year, which found that 77% of negative reviews were nothing to do with the product being sold, but the service that happened after the buy button.
Interesting.
With the most common, it's mad. And one of the most common things being things like missed deliveries, receiving the wrong item, poor communication, clunky refunds and returns and things like that. And so there's a real opportunity for merchants to solve those problems and have a boost on the customer experience, especially when we're in periods of kind of quite big peaks and troughs when it comes to demand and things like that. And the busy Christmas period upon us, this is where you can kind of either acquire lots of customers for the long term, or you can kind of cheese people off and never see them again.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. So that BBC article I referenced at the top of the call, it was actually saying they're a bit concerned that people are going to leave it right up until the last minute this year, and try and do all of that. Are you seeing anything like that in your data? Because obviously there was massive peaks. I mean, I think one of the payment partners we were talking about was saying the 12th of May, Monday the 12th of May, was the biggest ever day in their history. I won't name the payment provider because it was an off-the-record conversation, but this was bigger than any of their Black Fridays and all the rest of it. I think you look back at it, and that's when the government announced that there was a path out of this, but not yet. We were still in lockdown. So what are you guys seeing with regards to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. The Office of National Statistics, they publish quite a cool report which shows the percentage of sales coming from internet sales versus total retail. And it jumped from roughly 20% to a peak of about 33%. It's gone back a little bit down to about 30 now since the shops have opened and things like that. But that's a massive growth. I mean, it might not seem much, 30%, but that's a 50% growth in a really short space of time. Over the last kind of 15 years or so, it's been steadily growing at about 1% per year. So to have gone from 20 to 33 is pretty huge, and we're expecting it to be exactly the same. Leading up to the holiday season, so you've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but also the Christmas period, and it looks like the analysts are predicting some pretty significant increases. I think it was between 30 and 50% increase versus last year.
I mean that's pretty astronomical numbers. That particularly when I know some of our merchants struggle in a normal Christmas period, let alone when they're trying to do warehouse operations, socially distance, and all the rest of it. And I guess we're sticking to topic and talking about customer experience. I guess that's where, from a front end, it doesn't necessarily make that much of a difference because the website is the website, and there's certain bits we can do around optimization and speed and things like that to make sure it stands up. But actually, it's that back office piece, and I mean, I guess you guys are layering in automation all over the place where they don't necessarily this socially distanced warehouse. You can do quite a lot to do with that, can't you?
Yeah, I think that's a good point actually. I think the thing that we found particularly from our own data and our own customers is that everyone knows there's been some big winners and there's been some sectors that have been hit pretty hard. I actually think automation plays a part for all businesses because for the people that have seen a 5-10 increase in volumes, manual processes volume kills manual processes effectively. But even if you're not particularly busy and you've got people social distancing or ringing in sick or trying to self-isolate, you've got extra measures that you're trying to adhere to within the warehouse, then automation is like that silent employee that doesn't ring in sick and is ultra efficient and things like that. So it kind of picks up the slack,
Yeah, absolutely. Can it ever be a hindrance, the automation side of things?
I don't know if I'd ever call it a hindrance. I definitely think that there's some things that make sense to automate, and there's some things that just don't. They clearly don't. I think there's a cost benefit to weigh up for any business process. Some things do not make sense to to automate, either because they're too complicated or they're too low volume. We try and concentrate on the most repetitive, most predictable, lowish value tasks and try and automate those so that you're really only dealing with the exceptions.
What would that be? So would that be pick waves? Would that be applying postage methods? Could it be any of those bits? Sending inventory out?
It could be allocation of stock. It could be selection of the right carrier. It could simply be capturing that order and getting it to the warehouse in an orderly fashion. It could also be some of the more complicated things as well. So maybe you've got some of the stock on an order that can be fulfilled and some not. It could be that you've got stock in multiple warehouses. It could be that you're operating a dropship model and you've got a fairly high touch process in order to back that off to your supplier. So introducing automation for those little tasks is pretty key. We often see somewhere between 20 and 30 little micro tasks for sales order processing, and it could be businesses that are already using software, but they're still having to click. You've still got human beings making decisions and touching things within the software, and maybe multiple bits of software. So the ability to automate even those little tasks, when you blow up your orders 5-10 times during COVID, as some businesses have experienced, that one or two little steps that you have to do, if you have to do that hundreds of times per day, that's really when the mistakes start to creep in. That's when you miss that delivery cutoff. It's when the wrong thing turns up or doesn't turn up, or you're selling stuff on the website that no longer is on the shelf.
Absolutely. No, I can fully get that. I mean, Chris, pulling it back to you for a second. I mean, where does customer experience start and stop? Where does UX fit into that? And where does brand slot in? I guess I'm kind of thinking both in terms of the front end of it, email delivery, packaging. I mean, there's a huge topic just there in itself. Where does that kind of start and stop?
Well, I think when it comes to the difference between brand and UX, I think that the brand is the tone of voice, the values, the type and all that, and the color palette and all that kind of stuff. And then the user experience or customer experience is how does the customer experience that brand? So all the various touch points. So when they hit the website, or when they receive an email, or they ring up customer service, how is that tone of voice? How are those brand values delivered to the user at that particular touch point? So yeah, that's kind of the difference between brand and UX. I think that the automation is key to matching the user's expectations, which are only kind of increasing. The more people buy online, this expectation that the payment methods that they use are there, the delivery methods or the time slots that they want to access are there, that they, you complete your purchase and you expect a confirmation email seconds later.
Drives me mad, that particular one. I end up getting really anxious if it doesn't arrive straight away, because you think someone's have I placed the order? Has it not come in? That's a personal pet hate of mine.
Exactly. It starts to every little thing that a user interacts with, and it doesn't meet those expectations, just starts to kind of wear away at the trust that they have with the buyer, with the business. So yeah, matching those expectations throughout every touch point I think is key, and especially in times such as we're in at the moment, where people want to feel safe and secure. So if they come to a website and there's something that's sticking out to them that doesn't meet that, then they're going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, it's such a big piece. This we're Stuart, I don't think I've told you yet. We're in the process of doing a huge I won't call it a survey, because it's not. It's a data gathering exercise, and it'll be sort of featured in a future pod that we're talking about. But we're buying 100 items. Sorry, we're buying 4 sets of 25 items from 100 different retailers, from everything from budget down to up to expensive, from massive name high street brands down to little. Hopefully they're sending it from their garage. Either that, or we've really pitched someone badly, because we've looked at how they're operating and where we think they are. I know that's always the thing, because you get someone like Chris on a small project and you can make them look like they're sending it from a 700,000 square foot warehouse, and then similarly I've known instances the other way around. But we're looking at everything from the experience on the website, number of clicks to purchase, that standard delivery. Does it actually turn up? What does standard delivery mean? This is my favourite one, because depending on the value, where it's going to, and the retailer you're dealing with, sometimes you might get DPD, which is the same as their express service. So we're kind of doing a few bits to do with that, and sustainability is the big one out of that, which is because I think that it's such a key topic at the moment. So many companies are saying that they want to be sustainable, but yet they'll send a dress out in a plastic bag in the dress. There's 2 dresses in the bag in another plastic bag, and what they're doing around that. So I think it's probably stay tuned on that one. We'll update you when we've got some more stuff to talk about. But I think it's so key.
Great. Yeah, that sounds great. I don't know if we can mention the name, but there's a well-known ESP that produces a report, something similar to that.
We can. It's Dot Digital's one, isn't it? They're good pals of ours. Yeah.
If I may, I can't remember exactly when this is coming out, but we're about to release our own report called the Bright Trust Score 100. And so we've done something similar, and we've analysed 100 merchants, and we're publishing the top 100 in terms similar kind of thing. But we're looking at reviews, but we're looking deep into the quality of those reviews to see why people are giving them positive reviews, but in the reasons behind the negative reviews as well. So it's kind of going a little bit deeper into the into those kind of sentiment.
And I bet there's a piece in there, and it's down to this customer experience piece, isn't it? I bet there's a piece in there across all of it where they're actually really easy things to iron out, and there's probably some massive notices you're seeing, and you can see that because we've done NPS scores at 5874, and you can see certain things. We've changed some of our processes around that, and I bet it's similar to that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Do you know something? I say this all the time. It's amazing how many. One of my top tips for any e-commerce business listening is go and read all of your reviews. I mean, it's amazing how many people don't do that, because it's so easy to spot the common themes. Sometimes just on the first page, you've got fulfillment issues. You've got inefficiencies in that warehouse, or you've got people not receiving next day delivery, and people are screaming out that this is a problem. And not only are they not going to buy from you again, but they're probably putting off future customers as well. So I think if you read the reviews, I think quite often it's quite easy to spot those common themes and come up with a plan to address them.
Yeah.
Not always that simple.
It's such a bit. I mean, we should do another pod just on reviews on itself. But I mean, I remember far too many years ago for me to mention. But I was a pub manager for Whitbread, and they always used to talk about terrorists being 27. One in 20. So 1 in 27 were likely to leave a positive review, and 1 in 10 were likely to leave a negative review. Something like that. So you're far more likely to leave a negative review around something. Was where I was going to with that.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's a British thing. We love a good old moan, don't we? But yeah, it's definitely easier to attract a negative review.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, I guess I've got this thing in my head, guys, around where does brand start and stop, and where does automation start and stop? And I'll kind of tee up a bit of an example, and I'll let you both kind of come back on it. But I get the impression, it's probably wrong, that the John Lewis partnership, there's a person doing everything through every stage of that. Whereas at Amazon, it feels like it's a cyborg doing it through the entire thing. And I think you feel like you kind of get what you're going with that. I don't particularly know who wants to go first on that, really, but it's kind of, it feels like the customer experience and brand are directly tied to automation within that, and it's probably down to your expectations and service that you're setting out. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
Go on, Chris.
I was just going to say, I think part of that's about the brand perception, and that's the image that the brand are putting out. We've seen Amazon documentaries that look at the warehouses and things like that. It's no secret that they're a huge automated machine, and that they've been relying on kind of data to drive their decisions for decades now. So I think, and that's all part of their brand that they're putting out there. Whereas we've got John Lewis, and they've got their Christmas ads and all that kind of human kind of storytelling and all that kind of stuff. So it's about the message that's being put out there. But I would imagine that they've both got a decent level of automation going on. It's just how they let their brand tell that kind of that story around them.
Yeah, interesting. Stu, is there what a Brightpearl? Are you advising if you had a retail that was more John Lewis than Amazon? Are you advising them to do different things? How are they approaching that with how they're perceived? Or does it even matter? Because if you do the automation right, does it feel as though you don't even notice this? It's seamless. I guess is my question.
To be honest, my opinion on this is that whether you're a big company or a small company, I don't think as consumers we really care. I honestly think I'm so used to buying on Amazon, and I get that. You just get the great communication. You can track the guy to your door. You get a good price. You just have this great experience, and so I feel like we don't give too much leeway for smaller businesses. When you're buying from a website, you don't know whether it's a big company, a small company, whether they've got automated systems or manual systems. You don't really care. I honestly think that the front end makes the promise, of the trust, to attract me in the first place, to reading things like delivery policies and returns, and that's the promise. And to me, I just expect that back office to do that. I don't think as consumers we really kind of break it down to kind of front and back office, but I just think that it's just necessary. Like the back office just backs up the promise.
Yeah, it's such an important thing, that, isn't it? I mean, I know Chris will laugh that I mentioned this on the pod, but the Richard, my business partner, I think it wasn't last year, it was the year before. We were sat there just before Christmas, and he'd added up all of his Amazon Prime orders for the year. That he'd bought stuff for the office and bought stuff for home, and his wife had bought stuff. He'd done over 450 separate orders on Amazon Prime. So he's definitely got his £79 worth of value out of that. But I bet it'll probably be partially the free shipping bit, but I bet it's the convenience. And I guess, Chris, this kind of ties into the next bit, that customer experience about the ease of use and how simple it is to pay, to log in. It's just there. Where does that fit in? And I guess there's kind of, I suppose, also balance that off with, Richard there with those 400 odd purchases. Most of them wouldn't have been what I would call a considered purchase. He's not gone to go and buy a camera. He's been saving up for months for that. He's been, he's comparing things and all sorts of other things. He's probably just buying batteries and all sorts of other stuff. So, because where does that all kind of slide in?
Well, I mean, obviously, it reminds me of when we had our first child, and the convenience of one-click purchase when you've got a screaming baby and you want a good night's rest, and you just one-click whatever it might be in that moment. That they're not considered purchases. They're convenience, and they're instant. So I think for other kind of retailers, having that understanding that everything that you put in the way of the customer to kind of making that final purchase and pressing the confirm purchase button, is giving them another reason to either think about whether they should be buying this with you or considering someone else for the same item, so a competitor or something like that. And so starting off during the discovery processes we do, like looking at the wireframes and the user journeys and the user flows through the website, so that you can make sure that everything that comes after that is based on the research and an understanding of what your users fundamentally need from your website, is key to making sure that when you launch that site and people start using it, that it feels intuitive to them. It feels natural, it's easy, and the path to them receiving that item in the next couple of days is as slick and seamless as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuart, that kind of leads me to, I suppose, my next topic really, which is going towards customer service. And I suppose it's really it's partially around, I guess, some of your processes around automating and updating the customer. But I mean, I'm starting to think towards integrating the back end of Brightpearl with the front end of websites. And how are you guys approaching that? I mean, obviously, we're mainly a big commerce agency. We don't only do big commerce, but I mean, I guess we can pretty much talk pretty freely about anything there. How are you guys seeing that process and where it goes to?
I mean, in terms of customer service, if I just kind of bring this back to the reviews, like one of the most common, if not the most common, customer service query for e-commerce business is they call it Wizmo. Where's my order?
Yeah.
And it's quite clear to me from the data and in the research is that most e-commerce businesses don't have enough time and resource to dedicate to that. I mean, first of all, I think there's an expectation, again, bringing it back to the kind of the Amazon style experience. You don't expect to chase an online merchant for your order these days. You expect to get an email within seconds and a tracking reference and things like that. So, part of me thinks that we should be anticipating the requirement, the needs of the consumer. We should be on the front foot. That experience should match the expectations. Good communication, tracking references, ease of use, and things like that. That's pretty much our approach. I mean, in terms from a technology standpoint and things like that, there's kind of features built into the system, and we can integrate into your Zendesks and your people like that. But really, I think the most frustration, just bringing it back to those little things, those little reasons why people leave negative reviews or have bad experiences. That's a huge one. It's just basic.
I totally agree with all that, and I know we've actually just kicked off another project with you guys where they're what? How did Big Commerce refer to it the other day? They didn't say it was a B2B and a B2C company operating on one website. I think they called it B2B to C. It was something like that. I think Megan, I've done Megan a massive injustice there by how I've delivered that, but fundamentally it's one website where they've got both standard customers and they've got trade customers on it. And I know we're working with your team here because the trade customers are doing payment on account orders, but they're not just doing it through the website. Now, that's fine. It's quite straightforward in BigCommerce to actually go in and settle those payment on account orders. But what if I've emailed you my account manager? I want to be able to do both online. And we could do that with the Brightpearl API, and we could, and I think that's a huge part around this, and that's probably you start getting towards some of those edge cases, and that can massively improve your cash flow as a business, your touch points that you're talking to them, and how kind of slick you can end up and go from there. So I think it's great that you've kind of got those possibilities within Brightpearl. I think is where I'm going to.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that comes from our founders were running a B2B and a B2C brand all the years back, so we've always had that kind of functionality built into the system. I honestly think one of the traits that the most successful businesses have had over the last 6 months is just the ability to be flexible and agile, because you've seen brands, big household name brands, going direct to the consumer, for the first time and things like that. So there's change of business models, change in that front end promise, buy online and pick up in store that some brands are doing for the first time. So to be able to be agile and flexible, but also have the back office systems to be able to back up those promises is really important, especially as we're going into that kind of
such a big point there. And there was, I won't call out the retailer by name because I don't think it's particularly fair, but they were one of the big DIY companies. They're more home and gardens than DIY. My wife went to order something last night. She couldn't get it on the website, but it tells you what branches it's in stock in. She'd have driven to Leamington, that's 10 miles down the road, that'd have been fine. She could have taken my daughter to the gym at the same time, done. Yeah. It was in Coventry. She might go to Coventry once every 6 months. She didn't want to do that. There was no ability to order it from the branch. And this is crazy. If you've even got a half-sophisticated back-office system, let alone the likes of Brightpearl, this is straightforward, being able to do that true omni-channel piece that then layers into that. It answers that customer experience question.
Do you know something? This is one of the things I love about working at Brightpearl, because the advantages that some of these big organisations that have had, we bring that type of functionality to the smaller mid-sized businesses. Functionality that 5 years ago it was huge organisations, huge retailers, big shared merchants. It's all possible now with pretty standard technologies like us.
Yeah, and relatively quick to implement as well, isn't it, Stu? What's your average time from someone signing a contract with you to them being live?
It ranges. So an average is around about 80 to 90 days. We've done projects in as quick as a few weeks. Obviously, the more complex projects can take a little bit longer. That's done on a case by case as a full project plan created for every project.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, I mean, I guess this is probably one for you. I mean, I know we're touching towards this second lockdown. I know when we were going into the first one, I think just about every platform that we deal with were talking to us about, can you do this in 24 hours? Can you do this? I mean, I know we did. Let's not name the retailer because we'll get in trouble for it. But it was about a week end to end, wasn't it, for one particular big commerce site that we did. That was a whiskey one. So talk us a bit about that. As obviously you did the design part of that. I mean, actually, it was Lucy. It was one of your team, wasn't it, that did the design part of that? So what would be your advice? I suppose let's rephrase the question. What would be your advice for someone who's there are retailers out there that haven't adapted yet somehow, because we're still getting calls on a daily basis. But someone sat there at home now, they're watching this pod, listening to this pod on Spotify or whatever. They're going, I'm going to make the jump from a customer experience UX UI design perspective. Where would you start with them? What would you suggest?
Well, I mean, I think. We've talked about reviews and customer service and stuff like that. I think businesses collect an enormous amount of detail on their users, sometimes without realising it, but also often without actually kind of utilising it. So it would be a case of sitting down and seeing what kind of information they've got there. We'd obviously be looking at the business needs and what it needs to be profitable and all that kind of stuff. And so looking at those kind of two pools of information, where they overlap and what we can do to best serve those with an online presence. I mean, as we said, like now is the time to kind of get ahead of the upshift with Christmas, but with the second lockdown and that sort of thing. I was reading a Google article this morning that there's been a huge increase in search around near me products and in stock as well. So there's opportunities for the bricks and mortar kind of retailers to kind of get online and serve that extra need that people have due to the current situation. That's
such an interesting point, because the bricks and mortar retailers are not shut during this lockdown, are they? That's the big difference, isn't it? So it should be a lot of localised commerce should be going on, and I know it's something that we've kind of taken through our rebrand that we did at the beginning of this year, that we're talking about ourselves as a commerce agency, not an e-commerce agency, because we actually don't care where someone interacts with one of our merchants, where someone buys with one of our merchants, and how they experience it. What we care about is that they do, and they will probably absorb at least one of the touch points that we're dealing with. Now, whether it's Brightpearl POS or in a retail location, whether it's an e-commerce website or even a marketplace, and I think that's partly to me that's really important. And I think that's also it touches on everything from the experience they get, the automation they get, how the packaging is, all of that. It's massively important. So, guys, I'll tee you both up with one last one. And in the notes here, I've got it written down here, and I've been asking the guys on the previous podcast, but it was what happens over the next 12 months. But actually, I think we should say 3, because where we are now, and I think we need to. Rishi redid his budget from 3 years to about 3 weeks, I think. So why don't I ask you this question? So where do you see the e-com space going over the next 3 months? And I know everyone's talking about Instagram and some of those bits. Do you think there's going to be a mass rush of people coming online, brands going D2C? Where do you think it's going to be? Stu, why don't you start us off?
I think I'll answer this with we did some research, and it was basically around several thousand retailers, and it was about their ability to be flexible and survive. And it says here, 56% of UK retailers surveys said that they could survive another widespread lockdown. So only 56%. But it said only 54%. 54% had made no changes to their business model or systems in the event of a second wave.
Wow.
It was pretty incredible. So that's, on the one hand, people saying they couldn't survive it, but also
they've not made the change.
No, exactly. And so for me, I think my big thing, I think, is that I just hope that a lot of these businesses are ready for the next wave. We saw so many businesses caught out, whether they were just getting huge spikes in volume that they couldn't cope with, or they just saw their business go through the floor in a really short space of time. I just hope that there's businesses out there that are planning and prepping for it now, because we don't really know what's going to change. We talk about second lockdown. There were some announcements earlier this week that didn't really make too many changes. Like you said, the shops are still open. We're predicting huge growth during the Christmas period. Does that mean that people are going to be able to get to the shops? Will the shops be open? I think my hope is that these merchants will do what they need to do now to plan and be ready for whatever comes their way. In terms of a big prediction, I don't really have one for the next few months, if I'm honest. I just hope people are planning and prepping and doing the groundwork now.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Chris? Where's your head at on this one?
So I guess talking in terms of retailers that are either growing their online experience or coming to an online e-commerce space, I think that they focusing on closing the gap between the in-person experience and the digital experience, and that can take so many forms, but having a good range of high quality product images, so the customer can see the product from all the various angles, and providing kind of scale shots, so whether it's a person in the image as well, using the product so that they can in their mind best imagine that product in their environment. I think that helps bridge that gap. And then I think that providing a good level of kind of product detail and making sure that at each point you're answering the customer's questions before they have to before they think about them, or before they have to pick up the phone to a customer service operator or something like that. And then it's also about building the trust with kind of indicators such as contact details, whether it's where you're based, through to showing whether something is in stock or how long it's going to take to be delivered to somebody. These all help build confidence in the buyer getting across the finish line. And I think that's only going to be more and more important with the COVID, but also in the lead up to Christmas, when people want to make sure that without going to shops and actually buying the item straight away, that they're going to get what they want, and they're going to get it when they want it.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more with both of you across both of those points. I think there's some really valid bits. I mean, guys, we're pretty much up on time there. So I mean, I guess with that in mind, thanks for joining us today, everyone. Hopefully the guys have provided some useful insights on that you can take back to your business. I mean, I know personally they've kind of focused my mind particularly on we can do some real simple things going into this second lockdown. You don't need to make huge changes, whether it's little bits of automation that can potentially help out your business, whether it's some of those little product photos that Chris was talking about there at the end. I think ultimately, as long as we're starting to plan for this second lockdown and where we're looking to go through, it's not going to be a short process, this. And actually, like with anything in life, if you try and rush it at the last minute, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. But fundamentally, if you start, you're closer to finishing, aren't you? I think is the bigger thing. Stu, I'm gonna when your research is out, if you want to pop it in the comment section of this, then please do. But I'll tag up Stuart and Chris in the comments on YouTube and LinkedIn. Spotify obviously slightly more difficult. You'll have to hunt them down on LinkedIn and whatsoever, and we'll tag up Brightpearl as well. But thanks for joining us, everyone. And if you can't be good, be healthy and stay safe. And let's all get ready for Christmas. Thank you.